We've talked a lot about NIMBYism on this show when it comes to development and affordable housing. Now a new group is trying to turn the tables on that attitude. Turner Bitton is with SLC Neighbors for More Neighbors. Turner, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Really, this has been a big topic of conversation the last couple of years when you talk about high density and making housing more readily available and affordable. So when I heard about your group, it really caught my attention. I wanted to have you on. First off, talk about how this all started. Give us some background on your group.
Yeah, so our origin story starts with the Planning Commission in May of last year. And at the, I can't remember the exact date, but it was mid-May of last year, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on affordable housing incentives. And at that meeting, you had an entire group of people ranging across the ideological spectrum that showed up to talk about how bad the affordable housing incentives were. And I was in Switzerland at the time texting folks back here in the States. We were all pretty much raging at what was happening. And we decided that the conversation on affordable housing in Salt Lake City was completely broken. And we wanted to put together a group that could bring together the interests to advocate for affordable housing and housing of all types, because quite frankly, we just need to address the supply side of housing so badly in our city.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable the way we've seen it just skyrocket in just the last couple of years. We talked a little bit about that before we started this segment. You have some ideas on how to accomplish that mission that you talk about, and one of the main pieces to this recipe, so to speak, if you will, is an accessory dwelling unit, or an ADU. We hear that term quite a bit. Talk about why you see that as a crucial solution to this problem.
Yeah, so we see ADUs as an important piece of the solution to solving the affordable housing crisis. The interesting thing about ADUs, and the reason that they're such an important piece of this, is that they're easy to do, or they should be easy to do, but oftentimes zoning and other restrictions get in the way, which is something we're working on right now, trying to get the Salt Lake City Council to approve some policy proposals before them. But the thing that's important about ADUs is the benefits of them far outweigh any cost. And so for most ADUs, when you look at more developed markets for ADUs across the country, they generally rent, on average, about 40% below market rate in terms of rentals. And what that means is that they are an opportunity creator, that folks that want to live in high opportunity neighborhoods can often do so, can get that start through an ADU. But the benefits are more than financial. So the main motivator for folks building ADUs are often social in nature. It's to provide housing for a loved one, to make a little bit of rental income, to subsidize income, or to provide a place for an adult with a disability or a college student. And so it becomes a very gentle way of increasing density in a neighborhood and unlocking opportunity in that neighborhood.
Let's talk a little bit more about what an ADU is, because it really can take a lot of different forms. Give us some examples of what we're seeing in the market now.
Yeah, so there's two types. There's the attached ADU, which means that it's part of your home, finishing a basement and adding an entrance, repurposing a garage into a rental unit. And then there's the more common, which are the backyard ADUs. So that would be building a little home behind your existing home. I live here in the Glendale neighborhood, where we have small homes and large lots. And so there's an opportunity there to add an additional unit. You can often see these above garages, repurposed sheds. There's a whole host of ways that ADUs present themselves in neighborhoods.
You brought up the idea of zoning reform and saying that's something that is an important component of this. We are starting to see this talked about at the capital city level with Salt Lake City, but talk about what you think still needs to be done when it comes to zoning, and particularly why it's important when we're talking about these ADUs.
Yeah, so what Salt Lake City is proposing is changing a whole host of the policies that govern ADUs. So one of those is allowing for a larger ADU. Being able to build a little bit bigger of a building. Currently, they're limited at only several hundred square feet, and we should take advantage of the land that we have in the city, the limited land that we have in the city, by increasing the size of units that are able to be built. The thing that my group is focusing on right now is the owner occupancy requirement. So let's imagine that you own a home here in the city and you want to build an ADU, but you might not live in that home. Let's say that it was your mom's house, that maybe she's passed away, and you own a second property, and you want to build an ADU maybe to provide an additional house and a little bit more income by renting out to a student. Under Salt Lake City's code right now, you cannot do that. And this gets in the way, fundamentally, of producing more ADUs. So we've heard a lot from our elected leaders about how they view ADUs as very important. Well, if that is true, then we need to eliminate all the barriers that are in the way of building more ADUs. And owner occupancy, so when you look at California and you look at other developed ADU markets, removing the owner occupancy requirement resulted in more ADUs being built. And we should fundamentally want that for our city.
When it comes to zoning, are you laser focused on ADUs, or do you see other opportunities that could be achieved as well?
So we're looking at ADUs right now because that's in front of the council, but as an organization, we're also interested in upzoning the entire city. So when you look at what Minneapolis has done and Portland has done, they've essentially upzoned their entire city. They've gone from a default single-family zone to allowing for duplexes and triplexes. What's funny about Salt Lake City is that's going back to the future in a way. Prior to the 1990s, Salt Lake City allowed duplexes and triplexes in almost every area of the city. Now it would be illegal to do that in most areas of the city. When you look at places like the Avenues or Central City or Liberty Wells, these are areas that are defined by that neighborhood scale density, those duplexes, those triplexes, all this weird mix of buildings that allow for density while still preserving that sense of neighborhood.
Focusing on Salt Lake City, but obviously there are many suburbs in the Salt Lake Valley and then up and down the Wasatch Front. Is this something you would want to extend beyond the capital city as well?
So our work is focused right now on Salt Lake City. What we want to do is get Salt Lake City to be the model that other cities can follow. And certainly that there is a role here for the state in helping make this possible. So I would commend the state. In the last couple of years, they've moved towards standardizing the way that cities deal with ADUs. Looking at California a few years ago eliminated owner occupancy requirements, made it much easier statewide to build ADUs. So certainly something we're interested in.
You bring up something that a lot of people might not think about, and that is the impact that school closures can have on housing. Talk about that dynamic.
So this is another campaign we have right now. Salt Lake City School District is looking at closing up to 14 schools. They've got a list of 14 schools that have enrollment shortages. And that's fundamentally because families can't afford to live in Salt Lake City anymore. So we're seeing families move out of areas like Glendale and into Kearns, into Tooele, where you can get a larger home at a more affordable price. What we want Salt Lake City School Board to do as they look at closing schools is to evaluate the ones that might make a good fit for transitioning to housing. And so let's take in my neighborhood here, Parkview Elementary. It's one of the elementaries that's on the potential closure list. It sits on the 9-line trail. It's walking distance to a grocery store. It's on our bus line here in Glendale. That could potentially be a great spot for the district to leverage its position as a landowner and say, hey, we're going to put up this land, we're going to partner with Salt Lake City's redevelopment agency, but we want to see 3-bedroom houses. We want to see housing for our retirees and for our educators. We're willing to put the land up, but in exchange, we want to see this type of development pattern.
We see so many times, especially when we're talking about high density, but even in areas like this where people don't want to see this happening in their neighborhood. Why are you coming out and saying, yes, we do want to see this in our neighborhood?
Because this is better for neighborhoods. Our city is better and stronger when we welcome anyone who wants to live here. We have a vibrant travel industry. We have a vibrant hospitality industry. I love living in Salt Lake because of all of our restaurants. But we're facing a crisis where the people who sustain those industries can't live in the city that they work in. So I'm 32 years old. I bought my first house by a miracle 10 years ago. I've been able to leverage that, and I'm now in my 3rd home here in Glendale. But it took me 3 tries to get to Salt Lake. I am very worried that I will be the last of my friend group that's able to buy a home in Salt Lake City. I've got friends that live in Eagle Mountain and drive to Salt Lake City every day for work. They're sustaining our city, but they're not able to take part in living here. And I think the thing that is very fundamental about the work that we're trying to do is we want a city that has a diversity of incomes, a diversity of people, and all kinds of backgrounds to really contribute to the vibrant city that Salt Lake City is.
Okay, we'll have to end it on that note. Fascinating conversation, and we will keep an eye on how your mission goes in the coming months. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after.